Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Plum continued, Haru-kun, if you participated in that game, you should have been bound by the covenants and temporarily lost your memory of it. So how can you say you know the contents of the game? I did lose my memory of the game's contents, but what does that have to do with what I understand and remember? Don't you get it, Plum? Could it be? Plum gave up on the chess match. Her king was surrounded, and the only move left was castling. But castling would only buy her a little time. Plum didn't want to waste any more effort, as Haruya's victory was inevitable. Setting the pieces aside, Plum voiced her speculation. No, upon seeing Haruya's expression, it became a confirmation. Haru-kun, you knew about the Werebeasts game content long ago? Precisely. About the Werebeasts game, I understood it before my memory was erased, way before I even participated in the game. Understood. Papa, understood. Mihama picked up a pillow and placed it in Haruya's lap, then comfortably lay down on it, smiling innocently. She's just too adorable. Haruya coughed to calm himself, then heard Plum's puzzled voice. That doesn't make sense. While it's possible that the current king of humanity is a spy from another race trying to establish a puppet regime, there's no way for you to know that. The elves might cooperate with other races, but they advocate for a slave system when it comes to lower races like humanity. As for other races like the Fleagle or the Ex Machina, they wouldn't casually involve themselves in games. For example, Drumroll, the ultimate Fleagle, had lost a game to Hatsu's Izuna before. That's why Plum believed Haruya had no way of knowing the Werebeasts game content. Unless Plum thought of a serious possibility. If it were true, both the Damper and Sirens would be doomed. Haruya didn't pay much attention to Plum's deep thinking. Instead, he played with Mihama, who was sitting on the pillow in his lap. The little mermaid swam over Haruya's head at times and gently tapped his back with her tail at others. That can't be. Plum quietly dismissed her own speculation that Haruya was a spy for the Werebeasts. According to Plum's investigation, Haruya had interacted with the Werebeasts for a period of time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been staying in the guest room of the Werebeasts embassy in Elkia. As Plum pondered, a knock came at the door. It was Amira and Wusho. My dear husband, I'm back. Whoa. Don't just pounce on me, Layla. Nuzzle, your skin is so nice. Stop piling on me. And you too, Mihama-chan. Mihama? Layla's gaze fell on the little mermaid sitting on Haruya's head. She clapped her hands and picked up Mihama. So your name's Mihama, huh? Good, that means my dear has accepted our child. Mihama, this is Daddy. I know, Papa. Seems like my choice was correct. So good. Being harassed by both the big mermaid and the little mermaid, Haruya grabbed Mihama's clothes and pinched Layla's cheek. Both of you, quiet down. That's right. Amira also approached the group. We really should quiet down. About the topic you two were discussing earlier, please explain it in detail to me and Her Majesty. They must have overheard the conversation when they came in. Haruya nodded helplessly. At this point, telling them was the only option. So, Haruya picked up Mihama and began. First of all, don't just hold Mihama. Hold me too. The jealous degenerate queen interrupted. Shut up. Stop being so noisy like a dumb monkey. Haruya rebuked in annoyance. Ha 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 darling, scold me more. Everyone else could only sigh in exasperation. Actually, Haruya explained everything he had told Plum to Amira and Layla. Amira had the strongest reaction. This is too reckless, Your Majesty. That's the race peace we're talking about. If we lose, we'll become slaves to the Werebeasts. Even though they don't like water. Plum wore a look that said, see? No one would easily agree to this. Just as Haruya was about to say more, Layla hugged him. It's fine, I'll leave everything to my dear Haruya. I have no objections. Besides, are you two idiots? Layla laughed, pointing at the two who were opposed. If Haruya didn't have a chance of winning, he wouldn't be so foolish, right? So, let's just go for it. Face those beasts head on. Layla, your wording is a bit extreme. Not beasts, but beast-eared girls and boys. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they had the Siren Queen's approval. With both monarchs agreeing to the decision, the others had no room to object. Yes, the first step after obtaining the Siren's race peace was to return and conquer the land of Kemenamimi. Chapter 36, Embarking on a Conquest Journey with My Daughter. The Siren Queen, Layla Lorelei, had just awakened from an 800-year cold sleep, so she still needed rest and nourishment. Even though cold sleep could preserve her consciousness and freeze her bodily functions to prevent death from starvation, she still needed time to adjust to the current situation. Additionally, as Layla and Haruya were the Siren's queen and king respectively, one of them had to stay in Oshino to manage affairs. Naturally, that person had to be Layla. As the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Haruya planned to set off today for the Eastern Federation Embassy in Elkia to declare war. The only person he could take with him was Plum, as the Sirens couldn't survive on land for long. Of course, while it was possible to provide Sirens with living conditions on land using pools or tanks, but that would reduce efficiency, so it was a no-go. Thus, Haruya planned to set out today with Plum, taking the Sirens' race piece for one final gamble. However, accidents always happen when you least expect them. This often occurred when Haruya planned his perfect purchase bonuses, and most of them were fatal accidents. Ahem. Let's not dwell on the unpleasant past. This time, the accident wasn't something Haruya disliked. Haruya's daughter, Mihama, insisted on following Haruya no matter what anyone said. Well, there's no helping it. You can come along. After instructing others to prepare a mobile pool large enough for Mihama, Haruya made his final preparations. Hey, Layla, don't think I don't know you're trying to sneak into the cargo box. Humphrey. How unfair. You're taking Mihama but not me. Are you an idiot? Or is your brain really that soft? Oshino needs you. You'll have to handle all the things only the queen can manage. If that's what my dear says, then. I'm so happy. The queen cupped her face, squirming with delight. Her ornaments sparkled in the sunlight, as did her drool. After having Amira take care of the foolish queen, Haruya checked the necessary items and left Oshino with Plum and Mihama. Their mode of transportation was a magic-powered vehicle. Thanks to this, Haruya promised Plum some of his bodily fluids, but only after Mihama fell asleep. However, giving his bodily fluids to a trap was a rather awkward experience. Once on land, Haruya noticed that the sunlight here wasn't as comfortable as the lighting in Oshino, but the fresh air felt nice. With Plum, who had consumed enough of Haruya's sweat the previous night driving the vehicle, Haruya played with Mihama in the pool at the back. Embarking on an adventure in another world with his daughter. Who else could experience something like this? Looking at the items he had brought, disinfectant, to clean the water. Bathing supplies, for Mihama's baths. Easily digestible snacks, Mihama's food. Clothes made by Layla, Mihama's change of clothes. Yes, everything for Mihama was well prepared. Haruya had heard that Sirens could clean themselves in water. He wondered if that was true. Sitting nearby, Mihama played with a floating board in the pool. Papa, haha. She scooped up water and splashed it on Haruya, raising her hands triumphantly. Wet? Haruya smiled, as long as you're happy. By the way, Sirens are such a fascinating race. Should we add some ice? Ice too cold. This. Having interacted with Haruya and the others for a while, Mihama could now say some simple words. She rejected Haruya's suggestion to add ice, pointing to other wooden boards, seemingly very interested in them. Haruya found it truly marvelous that just a strand of hair could create a daughter. He gently stroked Mihama's head. Her hair was incredibly smooth and straight. Haruya's hair was slightly wavy, while Mihama's hair resembled her mother Layla's beautiful and lustrous appearance. Papa? What's that? That's a dragon. Can I eat? I don't think so. Are you hungry? Mihama shook her head. At that moment, Plum, who was supposed to be driving, crawled into the back. Plum, who's going to drive if you're not? Don't worry, Haru-kun. I used an autopilot spell combined with item control, so the vehicle will automatically head to the Eastern Federation Embassy in Elkia. Ah, I see. Magic was indeed convenient. Why didn't modern humans use magic? Also, the idea that a 30-year-old virgin could become a wizard was a lie. Haru-kun, do you have any surefire way to win this war? The Siren Queen trusts you, but I still don't fully understand. Even if Plum understood, he would still ask. Plum was someone who calculated everything carefully, always seeking the maximum benefit for his race, the Dapper. If Haruya failed, the Sirens would fall under the control of the Were Beasts, and the situation would change drastically. The Damper didn't want to make enemies with any race right now. Let me tell you my secret weapon. I'm all ears. As before, Haruya wiped the water off Mihama's face and said, I have the ability to predict the future, though I can't use it freely. But you know what predicting the future means for games, right? Predicting the future. Plum pressed further, is it magic? Or some special spell from the elves? Or perhaps the witchcraft of Amanity shamans? None of those. It's simply predicting the future. Simply. That kind of explanation. Plum. Haruya made Plum look at him, then picked up some Oshendo's specialties and snacks he had brought along. Want to share some snacks? Papa. Me too. Since you insist. Plum reluctantly agreed. After some time on the road, the sky gradually darkened. Countless stars appeared in the sky. Haruya opened the vehicle's roof so Mihama in the pool could see the sky. So pretty, Papa. Look at that. That star is huge. Haruya nodded. That's the moon, Haru-kun. I know that. As they spoke, the three of them gazed at the sky, slowly closing the distance to their destination. Chapter 37, An Unexpected Turn, a three-way game. Hearing a voice that wasn't exactly familiar but still brought a sense of comfort. Not only that, but this voice also evoked a strange feeling, what exactly am I doing? That said, now wasn't the time to reflect on the past or lament over whether he had made a mistake. Papa. We're here. This place. Haruya, 18 years old, was awakened by his siren daughter in another world. Opening his eyes, he felt a dampness on his face. Mihama, who had been in the pool, leaned out halfway and gently patted Haruya's cheeks with her wet hands. Come to think of it, the water in the pool needs to be changed, right? Yawning, Haruya shivered slightly from the cold morning water. Feeling more refreshed, he checked his surroundings. The damper boy next to him was also rubbing his eyes awake. Looking outside the vehicle, Mihama was right. The Werebeast's embassy in Elkia was now in sight. The towering building looked majestic. Mihama, half submerged in the water, pointed at something jumping down from above. Papa. What's that? Following Mihama's finger, Haruya saw a beast-eared lily jumping out from a window on one of the middle floors. It was Hatsuyu Suzuna, relying on her incredible physical abilities to run along the walls. Boom, landing on the ground, ignoring the cracks caused by her landing, the beast-eared lily walked out of the dust with a frown. Where have you been these past few days, you jerk, Haruya? Disu. Mihama, a bit scared, hid behind Haruya, glancing cautiously at Izuna as she approached. Oh, it's you, Izuna-chan. I'm sorry for leaving without notice. I left a note, right? Well. Never mind, that's not important. What's important is that I'm back. How have you been? The priestess has given her response. The next game time is being arranged. Disu. Really? But it's quite unexpected. I thought the game between Amanity and the Werebeasts would end differently. After all, Haruya had considered the possibility that the two races might form an alliance through Sora and the Werebeasts' representative, which would mean he'd have to face both races. Fortunately, the game between Amanity and the Werebeasts would continue for a while longer. Facing Izuna's questioning expression, Haruya stepped aside and introduced the people he had brought with him. One was a friend, and the other, well, his daughter. This is Plum, a damper. And this is Papa. Mihama tugged at Haruya's clothes, eyeing Izuna warily. Papa. Disu? Voiced Izuna. Izuna-chan, it's a long story. If you have business, come inside first, Disu. Grandpa is in his office right now. He'll be out soon, Disu. Following Izuna's instructions, Haruya noticed a problem. The pool couldn't be carried around. Perhaps sensing Haruya's confusion, Izuna climbed into the vehicle. Leave it to me, Disu. What are you going to do? I know she's a siren, Disu. I learned about them in Grandpa's class. Our embassy has guest rooms prepared for different races, Disu. I see. Haruya patted Mihama's head, telling her to follow the beast-eared lily who might be around the same age. Got it. Mihama nodded, eyeing Izuna as she approached. Izuna thought for a moment, then walked behind Mihama and picked her up by the scruff of her neck with her mouth. Okay, Disu. Like a cat carrying a mouse. Before Haruya could say anything, Izuna ran off toward the embassy with Mihama in her mouth. You'll find us on the 51st floor, Disu. With those words, Izuna, carrying Mihama, disappeared from sight. Plum glanced at the cracks Izuna had left when she landed, crossing his arms. Werebeasts really do have an advantage in physical abilities. Not to mention the higher races, but they might even rival our magic. Assuming no rules are broken. Don't flatter yourself. Remarked Haruya. It's not flattery, Haru-kun. Generally speaking, magic is more powerful than physical strength, right? Not necessarily. Some monsters are highly resistant to magic damage. Especially in modern RPGs, many bosses have extreme magic resistance or even ignore magic damage entirely. In such cases, Physical attacks become crucial. But enough about that. Haruya led Plum into the embassy. The werebeasts at the entrance had seen what happened earlier and allowed the two of them to enter the elevator. Pressing the button for the 51st floor, they waited for the elevator to reach their destination. Along the way, Plum still had doubts about Haruya's decision. I still think this is too reckless. Even if you have the ability to predict the future, you can't just act so carelessly, right? Don't worry. I may not be a true gamer, but I'd never underestimate any game. Give me your fluids. What are you saying out of nowhere? I refuse. Stingy. Ignoring Plum, they arrived at the 51st floor and made their way to the guest room. There, a half-height water tank was set up. Izuna was using a fishing rod with snacks to tease Mihama. This meat is super delicious, Bisu. I want it, I want it. Hee, jump for it, Bisu. Mihama, not one to back down, leaped out of the water and grabbed the snack. Impressive, Bisu. Of course. Oh, Papa. Hey. After exchanging greetings, everyone gathered around a table. Mihama fed Haruya something from the pool, a sweet-tasting meat whose origin was unclear. But more importantly, Haruya now heard Izuna's question. Regarding Haruya's departure and his return with a damper and siren, she asked, Haruya, have you become an enemy? Bisu. That's a good question. What do you think, Izuna-chan? Smells like an enemy, Bisu. Sniffing himself, then pushing away Plum, who wanted to smell him too, Haruya solemnly stated his purpose. I'm here to challenge you two. I'm wagering this. This is a race piece, Bisu. Haruya, you. Yeah, I awakened the Siren Queen. He glanced at Mihama, so, how about a fun and peaceful game? Bang. Immediately after Haruya's declaration, several people burst into the room. It was Sora and Shiro, along with Steph and the Flugel, Drumroll. We meet again, Haruya. Isn't it more fun to play a game between 3 opponents instead of just 2? And what does this proposal really mean? Chapter 38, A Sudden Idea. War. At this moment, representing the werebeasts, Hatsu's Izuna. Representing humanity, Sora and Shiro. And representing the sirens, Nangu Haruya. All were gathered here. Of course, if you wanted to include Plum, who represented the damper, that was also possible. However, the damper currently had no reason to wager their race piece in a game. Let me say it again, long time no see. I didn't expect such a big change in just a few days. I mean, hey. What's with that adorable little mermaid? Mid-sentence, Sora dashed to the edge of the pool at a speed almost too fast to see. At the same time, Shiro approached the pool using snacks to lure Mihama, who was hiding in a corner. Don't scare her. Is this the legendary mermaid? In a way, you are correct, Master. But they are called sirens, and she's a siren child. I haven't seen one in hundreds of years. Drumroll, standing behind Sora and Shiro, explained. Meanwhile, Mihama sent a distress signal to Haruya from inside the pool. Steph also cooed as she brought out some candy. Ah, she's really cute. Want some candy? As Steph approached, Mihama leaped out of the pool. Papa. Mihama jumped over everyone gathered around the pool and landed directly in Haruya's arms. Haruya's clothes became soaked by Mihama's wet body, but he didn't mind. Hey, be a little gentler, will you? He chastised the bunch. Ignoring Haruya's words, Sora's expression looked like he had eaten a bunch of spoiled chocolate, his non-existent HP bar above his head decreasing. He hugged his sister, his face filled with disbelief. Haruya, you were part of the Virgin Alliance too. How do you have a daughter now? Is this a lie? Did I load the wrong save file? That's pretty rude, you know. Haruya sighed, taking the wet towel Plum handed him to keep Mihama's skin moist. After briefly explaining everything that had happened to everyone present, Sora frowned and rubbed his chin. I see. So you awakened the legendary Siren Queen who was in cold sleep? Hey, Haruya, are there any more mermaids like that? I don't think so. What a shame. Ah, no, Shiro, I'm not sad about not becoming a dad. I haven't even taken half a step up the staircase of adulthood. Shiro just turned her head away. Then, Izuna interrupted their conversation. She wasn't as surprised by Haruya's story, perhaps because she already thought Haruya was the type to act recklessly. Ending the earlier nonsense, Izuna asked, Haruya, are you serious? You're going to wager the race piece and challenge us to a game, Disu? Yeah, I'm serious. Haruya's declaration as the holder of the race piece represented the entire siren race. While the two were talking, Sora wasn't idle. He looked at Izuna and Haruya, then put on a relaxed and amused expression. Multiplayer games, games with multiple players. In this world, while there are games where many opponents participate, there's never been a game where 3 races wager everything, right? Not quite, Master. During the Great War, different races would wager everything and fight. said Jibril. Jibril. Naughty. Shiro smacked Jibril's butt, causing her to let out a naya before falling silent. Sora continued, now that war is forbidden, games have become the means to resolve everything. The werebeasts, the sirens, and us representing humanity. Why don't we all have an unprecedented three-way game? The wager would be this, of course. In Sora's hand was humanity's race piece. Without a doubt, this would be a massive game where three races wagered their race pieces, provided all parties agreed. Considering it, Haruya paused for a moment. The winner of the game would control three races at once. Exactly. Sora confirmed, but it's not necessarily about control. The 10 Covenants require us to play happily and peacefully. That was the way to conquer this world, though it had little to do with the current situation. At this moment, three races were potentially about to wage an all-or-nothing war. 16th rank, humanity, the weakest and lowest ranked race among the Xseed. Physically frail, with a magic affinity of 0, they cannot use magic and are even unaware when magic is used on them. The name humanity was given by Tet after the Great War, as they are the very first intelligent creatures to appear on this board, even before the gods or the old Deus, and was regarded by Tet as the world's immune system, thus giving them the name humanity. During the Great War, they were utterly powerless against other races, surviving only by hiding and constantly monitoring other races' movements. Even a stray bullet from a battle could spell their doom. They once established the largest nation, but have since been pushed back, now left with only one city as a kingdom. As the only race born naturally, while the other races were created by the gods, humanity possesses the most primitive wisdom and the strongest adaptability. Humanity is weak, but at the same time, it proves their incredible survival skills, even against higher-ranked races. This is especially true now with Sora and Shiro as humanity's sole representatives. 14th rank, werebeasts, war beasts, they possess physical prowess that can reach the limits of physics. However, achieving this with just their physical body is, needless to say, physically impossible. What makes it possible is the manipulation of internal spirits. All life in this world has a small amount of spirits within them. The amount they possess and their neural affinity for connecting to the spirit corridor. In other words, how they handle external spirits, magic, determines their rank. As the 14th ranked race, werebeasts have extremely low affinity and cannot use magic, external spirits, at all. However, the manipulation of internal spirits is something every race, including humanity, does unconsciously. Werebeasts achieve astonishing physical performance by powerfully utilizing their internal spirits. The blood break used by Azuna and Maiko, the shrine priestess, is a prime example. By causing their internal spirits to go out of control, they push their physical performance to self-destructive levels. This is an innate skill of the werebeasts. 15th rank, sirens, mermaids, a race with humanoid upper bodies and fishtails below the waist, ranked 15th among the Xseed. They cannot stay out of the sea for long and have established their nation, Oshendo, in the southern seas of the Eastern Federation. They cannot use magic but possess the ability to charm anyone as long as they are in the sea. However, among the three races present, they appear to be the weakest. They have no combat capabilities, and their only asset is the underwater resources of Oshendo. So, what's the result? Everyone looked at Izuna. She didn't fully understand the situation, but knew that everyone could become opponents in the game. I'll tell Grandpa, and the priestess will also be notified, Disu. A game involving three races might just begin. Chapter 39, Virtual Chess Showdown. In Discord, the 16 races are forbidden from waging war due to the 10 Covenants. However, war within games is allowed, as long as no one gets hurt. Well, even if someone does get hurt, it's under very special circumstances. With that in mind, I've been thinking, if we use games as an excuse to carry out non-harmful invasions, could such a thing be possible? Also, Mahama-chan, don't eat that. It's for playing. While asking Plum, who was resting on the couch, Haruya also reminded Mahama, who was holding a game console. Mahama, who was in the pool, nodded obediently and threw it on the ground. Well, she's very well behaved. Papa. I'm hungry. Wait, I'll figure out something for lunch. Eating werebeast cuisine every day can get a bit boring. Haruya stood up from his seat, and Plum, who was nearby, responded to Haruya's earlier question. That kind of situation is impossible, Haru-kun. First of all, according to the 10 Covenants, the challenger must accept the reasonable game proposed by the challenged party, and both sides must agree on the wager. If the challenged party proposes an unbalanced game, the challenger definitely won't agree, right? Besides, even if the challenger hopes to trigger a war within the game through their actions, the challenged party would never allow such a thing. Additionally, Plum smiled and said, take the Damper and Werebeasts for example. If the Werebeasts tried something like that, we Damper would definitely use the game's rules and the 10 Covenants to restrict them. No race is foolish enough to be tricked by the other side's game rules. At this point, Plum retracted his statement, probably thinking of the Siren Queen who nearly caused the extinction of 2 races. Since Haruya was planning to make lunch, Plum followed him into the kitchen. Although they could have asked the were beast maid to bring lunch, the 3 of them had already grown tired of those meals after 3 days. Seeing Haruya and Plum enter the kitchen, Mihama, who was in the pool, didn't stay idle. Papa. Papa. I want to come too. There's no pool here, and you can't stay on land for too long, right? You. Papa. Haruya looked at the kitchen utensils and had no solution for Mihama's request. Leave it to me, Haru-kun. I'm full of magic right now. Plum offered. Why? Where did you get your food? I just licked your sweat a few times while you were asleep. No wonder I had a nightmare last night about being licked all over by a bunch of cats. You perverted damper. Don't say such things in front of a child, Haru-kun. Isn't it great that I have plenty of magic? Raising his right hand, Plum approached Mihama and placed his hand in the pool. Cool and refreshing. The siren summer is wonderful, and it's not cold in winter either. Focus. Haruya, holding a kitchen knife, directed Plum, who nodded and scooped up some water with his right hand. Although most of our magic is charm-based, we can still do this. As he spoke, the water around Mihama began to float, following Plum's voice. It slowly rose, eventually hovering about 2 meters above the ground. Mihama swam inside the giant floating water ball. Haha. This is so fun. Mihama tried spinning in circles, and the bubbles created by her movements rose to the surface before popping. Clearly, there was some danger. She might fall out of the water. Mihama-chan, don't go outside the water ball, okay? Okay, Papa. Mihama nodded obediently. Moving the water ball into the kitchen, Mihama followed along. Haruya sighed. For lunch, he'd make something simple, nothing too greasy. Opening the fridge, he found it wasn't well stocked. Just some meat, green vegetables, and a few fruits. Let's start with a fruit salad. Plum, can you make some ice? Haru-kun, I'm not some kind of magician who can create anything out of thin air. Useless. Hey. That hurts. Ignoring Plum's hurt feelings, Haruya found some ice in the bottom of the fridge. First, he needed to wash the fruit. Papa, I'll do it. Can you? Won't the dirty water stain the water ball? I can do this. Taking the apple from Haruya, Mihama dove into the water bowl to wash it, then moved the dirty water outside the ball. It seemed she couldn't control large amounts of seawater, but small amounts were manageable. With Mihama handling the fruit washing, Plum slicing, and Haruya preparing the main dishes, the 3 of them worked together. Soon, as the fruit salad was finished, the aroma of vegetable stew with meat filled the air. Bringing it to the living room, Haruya moved the table next to the pool so Mihama could reach out and grab food, though Haruya usually fed her. Alright, let's get ready to enjoy today's lunch. Just as Haruya was about to say that, someone jumped in through the window. Excuse me, Disu. It was Izuna, her clothes a bit messy, looking like she was in a hurry. What's going on, Izuna? I just got a message from the priestess, Disu. It was a shock, Disu. Ah. Mihama, holding a fork, assumed a defensive stance. Izuna calmed down and greeted everyone. Good afternoon, Disu. Then, she pulled out a scroll, seemingly containing the message she wanted to deliver. This is a notice from the priestess, sent from Kanagari. 3 days from now, when the game begins, the priestess will personally come to participate, Disu. So, Izuna-chan, what's the game you've proposed? We've already told Sora and Shiro. Now it's your turn. The game is Virtual Divine Beast Chess, Disu. Virtual Divine Beast Chess? Is it something like Chinese chess or international chess? Asked Haruya. International chess, Disu. Izuna didn't fully understand Haruya's question, but it didn't matter. So, it's Virtual Divine Beast International Chess, huh? Haruya stroked his chin. Sounds interesting. Chapter 40, The Opening Ceremony and such. 3 days later. Darling. You're here. It's been so long. Ugh. I've missed you so much. Yeah. Before that, stop banging your head against the glass like an idiot. You can't come out of the pool right now, can you? What a shame. I am an idiot, hee. I'm an idiot, and it feels so good when you scold me. But don't hit me, okay? Ahaha. In a pool several times larger than Mihama's, the Siren Queen, Layla, was dancing gracefully, her beautiful tail swaying in the water as she tried to get closer to Haruya through the glass. For Layla, being able to see Haruya again was like defeating the final boss and getting a 0.1% drop rate item. Well, that was just Haruya's way of describing it. Nearby, Plum was weaving a spell to allow Layla to move around in a floating water ball, just like Mihama. In fact, There was a simpler method, creating a water film around the siren's body using magic. It was much easier, though it was also more fragile. Plum, I kind of hope your spell fails. My spells never fail. I'm quite interested in the queens and your daily life and interactions, though. Plum stuck out his tongue, speaking as if it were none of his business. Mama, Mama. Here, take this. What is it, Mihama? Papa made cookies. With that, Mihama tossed the not-so-delicious cookies Haruya had haphazardly made into Layla's pool. Like a goldfish being fed, Layla swam to the surface and swallowed the cookies in one gulp, her face filled with happiness. The soggy cookies are so delicious, thanks for the compliment, I guess. Haruya didn't know what to say, so he just responded like that, letting Layla bask in her happiness for a while. Before long, Layla was able to move freely within the floating water ball. The first thing she did was, my love. Whoa. Gurgle, gurgle. Since Layla was inside the water ball, her sudden embrace pulled Haruya into the water ball as well, their faces rubbing against each other. Under normal circumstances, Haruya could tolerate it, but he had no interest in intimate skin-to-skin contact underwater. And he was running out of air. Haruya reached out to grab Layla. If she kept hugging him like this, he'd soon be embracing Hades, the god of the underworld. Haruya didn't want to use save scumming in this situation. It would be utterly meaningless. As he flailed his arms, Layla, who was hugging Haruya tightly, let out a there, that's. Layla's face turned bright red, and she released Haruya. Cough. Huff, huff. Once Haruya was out of the water ball, he gasped for air. I just grabbed your tail, that's all. No, Haruya-sama, my husband. For us siren women, our tails are something only our lovers can touch. Darling, is your tail the one in front? That's not a tail. Haruya retorted. Right, it's too small to be a tail. Don't say it's small. It's just in standby mode. Haruya didn't continue the banter. Now that Layla had arrived, it was time to set off. 3 days ago, Izuna had informed Haruya about the three-way game, and the Were-Beast's sole representative would also participate. Although Haruya had the right to object, since the challenge was initiated by his side, it was reasonable for the Were-Beasts to propose the game. Besides, Haruya thought it was better for the Were-Beasts to propose the game than for Sora and Shiro to withdraw. Today was the opening ceremony, not the official start of the game. Entering the embassy's first-floor hallway through a special passage, Layla asked Haruya, is there anything I need to do for this game? Not really. But since we're wagering the race piece, it's necessary for you as the queen to be here. No problem. I'll sit in the audience with Mihama and eat popcorn while watching you, darling. This isn't a movie. No, Mama. Mihama added, as the mother-daughter pair floated together in the same water ball. What about me? I'd like to join the game too. Plum's goal probably wasn't to participate in the game but to understand the essence of the Were-Beasts games. Haruya didn't object. After all, Plum, as a damper, could still be useful. Reaching the end of the hallway, the light became dazzling. Stepping out of the hallway onto the grand stage, Hatsuyus Ino, holding a microphone, saw the group. We've been waiting for you, he said. Ino didn't look too happy. Beside him stood the quiet Izuna and a golden-haired, golden-eared, two-tailed fox wearing a shrine maiden outfit woven with white, red, and black. She was a glasses-wearing beauty and the Were-Beasts priestess, their sole representative. So, the Siren Queen and the king, huh? The priestess paused, narrowing her eyes slightly and smiling. Her presence was overwhelming, exuding both authority and allure. Stop staring at her. Layla splashed water on Haruya, complaining unhappily. On the other side, Sora, Shiro, and their group had already arrived. Their eyes were fixed on Layla and Mihama in the water ball, clearly intrigued by the mermaid mother-daughter pair. Shiro, it's not just the little mermaid, there's a big mermaid too. I didn't expect Haruya to become so impressive. Nissan. Calm down. I'm confiscating your H-books. No, don't. I was just fantasizing about having a siren girlfriend. Steph, standing behind them, put her hands on her hips. Sora. So this is what you do while I'm working? That's just how Master is, Steph. Don't bother arguing with a virgin. Suddenly, the place became lively. The audience consisted of a few Humanity representatives and some Were-Beasts, as this wasn't the official start of the game. Now that everyone's here, let's. Ino tried to start the formal discussion. But Sora and Shiro interrupted. The elderly Were-Beast tried to continue, let's. Darling, scold me. Layla's voice cut in again. Let's. You're a married couple? What an odd combination. A siren and an humanity. The priestess chimed in. I said. Grandpa seems to want to say something, Disu. Izuna stole the spotlight. Seeing everyone's eyes on him, Ino glanced at his granddaughter. He wiped the sweat from his brow and continued, damn it, let's just chat. Chapter 41, Rules and the Beginning. Ascanthi. Before everything began, everyone swore not to disclose or record the contents of this meeting in any form. The game where the sirens, beasts, and humanity wagered their race pieces. Before this game could begin, a series of discussions and communications were indeed necessary. This meeting was also broadcast on screens across the three races, ensuring that everyone understood what was happening. A game needs rules, and the rules needed to be discussed and agreed upon by the representatives of the three races. This became the consensus among everyone present. On the stage set up in the first floor of the Eastern Federation Embassy in Elkia, seated around a round table, the golden-haired, fox-eared priestess began speaking first. The basic rules of the game will not change for all participating players. If we, the werebeasts, win, the other participants will forget everything about the game. Of course, only these memories will disappear, and it won't affect other memories. Don't worry, priestess. We understand this rule well. Similar to the previous game, we can't recall any information. Though it's still a shame. Sora chimed in, glancing at his sister. Shiro continued, the memory erasing rule is acceptable. Wagering race pieces. Only one winner. Shiro's words emphasized that this game would involve wagering their race pieces. Additionally, the phrase only one winner meant the winner would become the sole representative of all three races. Without a doubt, this was a game of immense significance, one that would alter the current state of the world. Everyone understood that when one person, or one group, became the representative of three races, there were many things they could do. Now that we understand the basic rules, let's talk about the details of this game. Ino. Yes, priestess. This game is called Virtual Divine Beast Chess. Ino stood up from his seat, and screens facing all directions appeared on the table. The screens displayed many divine beasts made of data. Some looked terrifying, while others were cute. First, these divine beasts will randomly represent the pieces in chess: king, queen, knight, and so on. What's different from regular chess is that the participants will directly command these divine beast pieces in the game. I have a question. The first to ask was Plum, sitting next to Haruya. By directly command, you means moving alongside the divine beast pieces? Yes, that's correct. But what does divine beast pieces mean? Is it really possible? Is it the use of illusions or magic? As you know, we werebeasts cannot use magic. But since we've already sworn to the covenants, I'll tell you. We will use a virtual game as the medium for this match. That's complicated. Then, next question. What about the participants? The physical capabilities of werebeasts, Flugel, humanity, Damper, and sirens are completely different. Won't that create an unfair advantage? Haruya wanted to clarify one thing: he wouldn't let Layla or Mahama participate in the game. Don't worry about that. In the game, everyone's physical parameters will be equalized. I see. Haruya understood the werebeast's plan. If everyone's physical parameters were equalized, Jibril, the Flugel, would lose her advantage. Additionally, these parameters would likely be set high but not excessively so, probably just enough for Izuna to use Blood Break. Alright, I have no more questions. My turn. Layla raised her hand from the water, and Mahama imitated her. What is this, a quiz show? Haruya thought to himself. Ino, maintaining his composure in front of the priestess, gestured for Layla to ask her question. Can I eat that pine nut? She asked a rather silly question. However, Ino remained calm and nodded in agreement. Layla picked up the pine nut, peeled it, and brought it to Haruya's mouth. Here, darling. Thank you, but don't ask irrelevant, stupid questions. Understood. I won't ask stupid questions anymore, hee hee. After feeding the pine nut to Haruya and another to Mahama, Layla happily swished her tail. How enviable. Wait, no. Ino, I have a question too. Sora interjected at this point, raising a concern that even Haruya found problematic. I'm very interested in your virtual game, but before that, how will the three-way chess be set up? Aren't you worried that two sides might team up to eliminate the third before starting a two-player game? Don't worry about that either. To prevent two sides from teaming up, we've added an additional rule. No targeting a single opponent. What does that mean? If, for example, Soradano's first move is to attack Izuna, his next move must be to attack Nangudano until one side is eliminated from the game. I see. That does limit cooperation to some extent, but... Before Sora could finish, Haruya spoke up. I know what you're thinking, Sora. If my move is already a check, the next move can't eliminate the opponent, right? Ino nodded. Even if it's checkmate, the opponent can't be immediately eliminated. The only way to win is to force the opponent into a position where they can't escape being checked in the next move. However, this is nearly impossible, or at least extremely difficult. Those are the rules. Does anyone else have questions? If not, let's continue. Facing Ino's counter question, no one else had any issues. Let me summarize. Also, the other rules are the same as regular chess. After Ino finished, he summarized the rules. 1. The game is a virtual version of Divine Beast chess. 2. The chess pieces are replaced by divine beasts. 3. The physical stats of all participants will be equalized. 4. Cooperation is prohibited, and players must follow the rule of no targeting a single opponent. 5. Cheating is strictly forbidden. 6. As per the covenant, the sirens, were beasts, and humanity will wager their race pieces. The 5th rule was clearly just for show. Is the meeting over? Then let's go back and get cozy. Haruya, being pestered by Layla and nearly dragged into the water, thought to himself, I'd like to continue discussing, though. Chapter 42, The Roar of the Divine Beast, Part 1. After a negotiation that could hardly be called complicated, the representatives of the 3 races reached a conclusion regarding the start time of the game. It would begin at dawn 2 days later. During this time, Nanbu Haruya planned to discuss the winning strategy with Plum thoroughly. Having the ability to save and load checkpoints was indeed a significant advantage, but this advantage had to be built upon a flawless plan. Otherwise, it would just be a waste of time. However, as always, reality often clashed with Haruya's expectations. The weather is nice today, darling. Could you pass me the meat over there? I want to practice grilling. Even if you practice grilling, once we return to Oshendo, we won't be able to recreate this situation, right? Haruya pointed out. No. Plum immediately corrected Haruya. Speaking to the Siren Queen Layla in the pool, he said in a proud tone, if we use the spells provided by our Dampa race, we can recreate everything from the land, provided we have enough energy. With the combination of illusion and recreation spells, you can even experience the feeling of falling from the sky and crashing to the ground. No one would want to experience crashing to the ground though, said Haruya. That's not entirely true. The important part is experiencing the thrill of falling before turning into mush. In a world where no one can harm each other, this is a rare experience. Plum explained. In other words, it's like a high-altitude jump without any safety measures. And, of course, the result would be death. The world bound by the 10 covenants had somehow become twisted in unexpected ways. Haruya adjusted the angle of his straw hat and glanced up at the blinding sunlight. The weather was indeed nice today. The plan he had wanted to discuss with Plum was interrupted by the siren mother and daughter. In short, his wife and daughter had demanded that he take them out for a barbecue today, or they would jump out of the pool. Under this strange threat, Haruya borrowed the necessary grilling tools from Izuna and the others and headed to the small forest behind the embassy. It was a clearing surrounded by green vegetation and a small stream that babbled softly. Darling. Do you have any sunscreen? Sunscreen? Do you mean pearl powder? No. I mean your saliva, darling. Go die. Scold me more. Layla, who was in the pool with Mihama, said this, then calmly taught Mihama how to use the grilling tools. Plum, as usual, stayed inside his box and conversed with Haruya and the others. At the moment, Plum was extending a gloved hand from the box, using tongs to arrange the meat on the grill. Sighing, Haruya let happiness slip away and began to focus on the task at hand. It seemed like the entire day would be wasted on these meaningless activities. Papa. The sky. What is it? Looking up, Haruya saw strange creatures flying across the sky, including a massive dragon. Papa, the dragon's head is so big. Long and thick. Don't use the words you learned in games here. Priestess of the Moon. That's not how you use Priestess of the Moon either. Mihama, who couldn't hear what Haruya was saying, didn't even know what she was saying. In any case, she had learned a lot about games. Darling, the meat is going to burn. I'm coming. No, don't splash water on it with your tail. After stopping Layla from drenching the meat with water, Haruya finally began grilling properly. He flipped the meat, sprinkled spices on it, and added a special chili sauce. The chili sauce was provided by Ino, who said it was made by his wife. Who knows which wife he meant? Just as the meat was done, a voice called out from above. Haruya. Can I join too? Risu. Of course. What about me? I'm a bit hungry. Old man Ino, you're just here to spy on us, aren't you? Ino didn't respond, only retorted sarcastically, it's foolish to be so relaxed before the game starts. I may be an idiot, but don't insult my husband, you hairy dog. You're covered in fur everywhere, aren't you? Layla rebuked. Ino was momentarily at a loss for words. Though Layla had just admitted she was an idiot, Ino and Izuna sat down on the prepared chairs, and Haruya brought out a few more plates. Just as he was about to serve the meat, the space in front of him suddenly warped. Boom. A sound effect seemed to play as 4 people appeared out of thin air. The siblings Sora and Shiro, along with Steph and Drumroll, who handled the teleportation. Haruya, we're here to mooch some food. Sora. I've cooked for you too. Steph pouted, clearly dissatisfied. So that's what actual cooking looks like. Shiro, you shouldn't say that out loud. Hey. Clearly, Steph wasn't very skilled at cooking. Faced with the sudden arrival of guests, Haruya signaled Plum to fetch more utensils. What a hassle. Then Plum, still inside his box, moved around with the box, which looked rather comical. Once Sora and Shiro arrived, they began teasing Izuna, Layla, and Mahama, showing great interest in the Keminamimi and mermaids. Sighing again, Haruya gave up on his earlier plans. No matter what happened, he would just have to wing it when the time came, right? After grilling the meat, Haruya divided it into portions and let everyone serve themselves. Although there were vegetables, everyone present seemed more interested in the meat. Enjoying his portion in the shade, Sora suddenly appeared beside him. Hey, what do you think about this game? What do I think? Well, come on, you know what I mean. We won't oppose whoever hosts this game, but we do have our doubts. It's definitely advantageous for Izuna and the others, even if the winners will be us. That's quite a confident statement. And you, Haruya? You don't want to lose, right? Of course not. I'm a man who can foresee the future after all. Oh? Sora crouched down. By foreseeing the future, what kind of future do you mean? Let me guess, predicting a changeable future, an unchangeable future, or perhaps a parallel future. I haven't thought about that yet. Then you should start thinking about it. Sora smiled. Regardless, Shiro and I will never lose. Plum and I won't either. Probably. Rather than focusing on who would win the game, Haruya wanted to achieve his goals through various means as a non-gamer gaming genius. Chapter 43, The Roar of the Divine Beast, Part 2. After about a day of rest, the game between the 3 races, Sirens, Beasts, and humanity began as scheduled. Haruya took a moment to recall the rules and additional conditions of the game. 1. The game is a virtual version of Divine Beast chess. 2. The chess pieces are replaced by divine beasts. 3. The physical stats of all participants will be equalized. 4. Cooperation is prohibited, and players must follow the rule of no targeting a single opponent. 5. Cheating is strictly forbidden. 6. As per the covenant, the Sirens, Beasts, and humanity will wager their race pieces. Lastly, at the start of the game, players will not know who their opponents are. The colors red, yellow, and blue will be randomly assigned to the players' pieces. Additionally, direct attacks between players are prohibited. Thinking about this, Haruya realized that cooperation in the game would be extremely difficult and akin to gambling. After all, no one would know what the others were thinking or what strategies they might employ to win. Even if the siblings, Sora and Shiro, could predict the future through calculations, they couldn't perfectly predict people's thoughts. Thoughts are unrelated to rules or logic, they are entirely based on individual thinking, making anything possible. In fact, the only being capable of fully understanding another's thoughts would be something like Laplace's demon. There are surprisingly many spectators today. Of course, it's a game involving 3 races. And it's not just members of those races, there are probably others mixed in as well. Due to the covenants, all spectators are bound by the game rules, so gathering information won't be easy. Haruya and Plum stood in the backstage corridor, watching as the embassy's first floor hall filled with people. On the left was the siren section, crowded with mermaids all gathered in the pool, drawing many gazes. In the center were the humanity, the largest group, some curious, some nervous, and others ready for action. On the right were the Beasts cheer squad, as their representative was also participating in the game. At the front of the siren cheer squad on the left were Haruya's wife and daughter, which gave him a somewhat complicated feeling. Layla and Mahama held small flags with Haruya's name, waiting for the game to begin. Why isn't there a flag for me? Plum lamented. Isn't it because Damper don't like the spotlight? Is that a pun, Haru-kun? Yes, it is. As they waited for Ino, the host, to take the stage, Haruya finished the drink he was carrying. Plum, let's do our best. That goes without saying, Haru-kun. I'm feeling a bit thirsty, can I have your bottle? It's empty. Give it to me. Plum took the empty bottle from Haruya and opened his mouth to suck on the bottle's opening. I really admire your race, Haru-kun. Humanity's solescence is quite delicious. Say, do you have more? Ignoring Plum, who was asking for more empty bottles, Haruya watched as Hatsu's Ino took the stage amidst cheers. Today will undoubtedly be a significant day. Let us welcome the representatives and co-players of the three races to the stage. With that, the Humanity team consisting of Sora, Shiro, Steph, and Jibril. The Were-Beast team, Izuna and the Priestess. And the Siren team, Haruya and Plum, all entered the stage. Much like in the previous game, they all took their seats and waited for the game to begin. Before starting, Ino read out the game's rules and the covenants, ensuring everyone understood the nature of the game. A game between three races, where the winner would gain access to Oceano's underwater resources, Elkia's vast lands, and the Eastern Federation's technology. Such immense rewards were undeniably attractive to anyone. Before the game begins, we will swear an oath to the covenants, affirming that all participants will abide by the rules and accept the outcome, no matter what. Ino paused and looked at the participants behind him. Does anyone have any questions? You may ask now. The seated participants glanced at each other, but no one raised any questions. I think I have one. Plum raised his hand, and Ino signaled for him to speak. Can that fluorescent light over there be turned off? I believe that can be arranged. At that moment, Plum felt Haruya's disapproving gaze. That light is a bit uncomfortable for me, Haru-kun. Plum said. Shut up, you perverted damper. After confirming there were no further questions, Ino instructed everyone to begin the oath. Askanti. And so, the game began. Lying back in their chairs, their consciousness faded gently before gradually becoming clear again. Upon entering the game world, a brief introduction appeared before everything began. Long, long ago. A cliché opening. An unnamed god, bored and seeking entertainment, made a pact with the divine beasts. The beasts, now chess pieces, would obey the player's commands. In return, the god granted them eternal life, allowing the game to live on. And so, let us begin. That was quick. The text disappeared, and the surroundings underwent a dramatic change. Haru-kun, this isn't a chessboard. Plum said. Haruya nodded, and looked around. A forest. And a river? Although it was called chess, there was no chessboard in sight. The area was an endless forest, a sea of green blocking their vision. The ground beneath their feet was muddy, with a stone path leading to a riverbank in the distance. Do not worry. You can see the terrain map in front of you, which displays your piece's markers and movement range. In principle, it's the same as chess. Ino's voice echoed before fading. Standing before Haruya and Plum was a divine beast marked with the symbol of the king. It stood 10 meters tall, with massive tusks and sharp claws. Its black and gold skin shimmered, and every breath it took altered the wind's direction. Then, the giant divine beast raised its head. Ruar! And roared. The game had begun. Chapter 44, The True Rules and Mechanics of the Game. In this game, gathering information before taking action is essential. Staring at the semi-transparent, wide-area chessboard floating before him, Haruya first confirmed the information they currently had. Judging by the emblem and color on the side of the divine beast, we've been assigned the blue team. And this massive divine beast beside us is our king. That makes sense. The color and emblem indicate that, so we're currently at the center of the rear of our formation, right? Plum ventured a guess. Haruya agreed, correct. It seems that in virtual chess, we don't need to charge to the front lines or scout the situation. The damper nodded. Since they were in a virtual world, even standing under the sunlight didn't feel real. Plum looked up at the sun, stuck out his tongue, and said, making faces at the sun. Virtual feels amazing. If I did this with the actual sun, my tongue would have been burned to a crisp. Enough nonsense. From what we can see on the chessboard, we can't track the enemy's movements. Haruya noted. It's different from regular chess, Haru-kun. Without knowing the enemy's position, making the first move could be a foolish decision. In that case, we'll have to wait and act cautiously. Also, this. Haruya pointed to the triangular zone on the chessboard in front of him. This virtual chessboard needed some explanation. It consisted of a central equilateral triangle and 3 square chessboards, suggesting that the three-way battle would unfold in the central triangle. Additionally, aside from the central shared zone and their own chessboard, the other players' boards were covered in a fog of war. To gain an advantage, we'll have to attack them here, said Haruya. The grid in this equilateral triangle is strange. It's different from a regular chessboard, so don't get careless, Haru-kun. Plum warned. That was true. The grid in the equilateral triangle was densely packed. A dense grid meant more squares, which reduced the likelihood of closing the distance quickly. At the same time, it increased the risk of being ambushed. But the first few moves should be safe. After all, we're so far apart. Don't forget, Plum. Haruya dismissed Plum's comment and turned his gaze to the massive divine beast beside him. The king, represented by the divine beast, stood motionless, staring at the land ahead. Haruya continued, for these divine beasts, What we consider a great distance might only be a small step for them. Through the chessboard, they could see the movement range of the divine beast pieces. It would only take a few steps for them to reach the triangular zone. Moreover, the rook-type divine beasts could move unlimited distances horizontally or vertically. In regular chess, the battle usually begins after 2 moves. This game was likely no different. Judging by the movement range of the divine beasts and the size of the chessboard, the terrain was merely a distraction. To seize a favorable position, Haruya decided to move his pawn 2 steps forward on the first move for his turn. Since the pieces are not black and white, the order of play will be red, yellow, and blue. After Ino added this rule, it wasn't long before Haruya's turn came. Haruya was blue, the last to move. Sora and Shiro, along with Izuna and the others, had already started the game. Haru-kun, do you think this game is as simple as it seems? I mean, do you think it's just replacing the pieces with divine beasts and adding an extra player? Of course not. This game is definitely advantageous for the wearer beasts. Without wasting any more time, Haruya ordered the pawn on the far left to move 2 steps forward. In an instant, the ground shook, and with a monstrous roar, Haruya's divine beast piece began to move. To get a better view of what was happening, Haruya climbed onto the back of the king divine beast, since it had a lot of fur. Haru-kun, you're really fearless. Plum didn't dare get close to the divine beast, so Haruya stood on its back on his own and looked into the distance. Through the mist-covered forest, Haruya's pawn divine beast charged across the land. Trees were uprooted, the ground cracked, and it soon reached the designated position. According to the virtual chessboard, the divine beast was now close to the equilateral triangle zone. Plum, do you think these divine beasts will really obey our every command? Not only Plum, but the divine beast under Haruya's feet also reacted. It shook its body and began to stroll leisurely. Haruya gripped the divine beast's fur as he moved on its back. Even though he hadn't given any commands, it was moving on its own. Within its allowed range, at least. Haru-kun. Wait for me. Do you think I can make it stop? Then let's do this. Plum picked up a rock and tossed it in front of the king divine beast. Roar. Like a dog chasing a ball, the king charged after the rock, carrying Haruya along. Whoa. This was Haruya's first time riding such a dangerous roller coaster. The fierce wind roared past his ears as the king caught up to the rock, scooped it up with its mouth, and placed it in front of Plum. Good job, Cory. Who's Cory? Plum pointed at the king and said, I just named him. What do you think, Haru-kun? More importantly, I think we should head to the front lines. No problem. With that, Plum threw the rock again. Jumping off the king's back, Haruya and Plum ran toward the front lines. Haruya noticed that his physical capabilities were slightly superior to those of an ordinary human, which aligned with his earlier assumption, maintained at the minimum level required to use Blood Break. It took them a few minutes to reach the spot where the pawn divine beast had arrived in just a few seconds. In the distance, Haruya saw faint shadows. Hiding in the forest, the sun above grew increasingly scorching, and the mist that obscured their vision gradually dissipated. Then they saw it. Not far away, there were 2 more divine beasts. A winged tiger-like divine beast with yellow markings, that was Sora and Shiro's piece. How did Haruya know? The reason was simple. On the other side, sitting atop a monster covered in iron-like scales, was the Eastern Federation's sole representative, the Shrine Priestess, Maiko, and Ambassador Izuna. Their pieces were red, so it was clear that Sora and Shiro owned the yellow pieces. Why were they, as players of the chess game, moving to the front lines? Did that mean the players weren't affected by in-game combat? If so, entering the game world was unnecessary. Just as Haruya was thinking this, Plum suddenly tackled him to the ground. Plum. Before Haruya could finish, an explosion rang out. The fox-eared Shrine Priestess had commanded her divine beast to attack. From a distance, it charged forward. According to the rules of normal chess, it should only move to a nearby position and shouldn't be able to attack them yet. However, the divine beast in the distance spewed flames from its mouth. The intense flames engulfed the forest, and Haruya's pawn divine beast roared in the fire. Boom. The intense burning caused the divine beast to collapse, barely alive. Haruya stood up, breathing heavily, and looked around at the charred forest. What the hell is this game? Chapter 45, The Dance of War. The air around Haruya was filled with the acrid smell of burning. The charred tree trunks crumbled at the slightest touch, making him worry if the ground beneath his feet was even safe. The reason Haruya and Plum, who had ventured to the front lines, hadn't been consumed by the flames was because Plum had used a spell. However, such spells drained a significant amount of physical and mental energy, and Plum's body couldn't handle continuous use. To ensure their safety, Haruya carried the pale-faced damper on his back as they retreated. Hey! Old man Ino. What the hell was that just now? Why did a piece that was supposed to be at a distance suddenly breathe fire at us? The title of the game already made it clear. Virtual Divine Beast Chess. These divine beasts are indeed chess pieces, but they're not just ordinary pieces. Since they're divine beasts, isn't it natural for them to have special abilities? That's just sophistry. Even so, Haruya didn't have a good reason to refute it. Divine beast pieces. As the name suggested, they were both chess pieces and divine beasts. The overwhelming combat power of these divine beasts was something ordinary people could never hope to match. These virtual creatures were invincible in this virtual world. Only a divine beast could defeat another divine beast. As the controller of these pieces, Haruya realized one thing: this game required not only strategy but also an understanding of the divine beasts themselves. In the distance, Sora and Shiro stood beside a black wolf that was about half the height of a person. Steph, who had fainted from fright, was lying on top of it. Sora broke the ice. Shiro, it's just as I thought. But this is even more extreme than the previous living chess. These divine beasts aren't creatures that can be easily swayed with words. Nissan. Its fur feels so soft. Let me try it too. This divine beast is surprisingly tame, and it's so small. Sora stroked the black wolf's fur. Unlike the other divine beasts, its size was only slightly larger than a human. To be more precise, it was about twice the size of a lion. Master, don't waste time petting it. It's our turn to move now. Drumroll stood on a tree branch above Sora and Shiro, looking into the distance. Since our physical stats are restricted, my vision has also weakened. But I saw what happened just now clearly. Drumroll, don't worry. The important part of this game isn't the moves. Sora said. What do you mean, Master? I said it from the beginning, didn't I? Sora continued to stroke the black wolf's soft fur alongside Shiro, and the wolf seemed to enjoy it, gently swaying its body. That old man Ino said, the pieces will be randomly assigned. In other words, the strength of these divine beasts has nothing to do with the role of the pieces. For example, this fluffy wolf here. In other words, before we make a move, we shouldn't be thinking about how to capture the opponent's pieces. Instead, we should be thinking about how to make our pieces destroy the opponent's pieces. Haruya, who was carrying Plum on his back, said this. He had finally understood the true meaning of this game. Yes, it wasn't about capturing. It was about destroying, or rather, killing. These pieces were represented by divine beasts, and the combat power of the divine beasts would determine whether they could capture the opponent's pieces. Of course, the rank of the pieces such as king, queen, rook, knight, and so on, might affect the divine beast's combat power, but most of it depended on the divine beasts themselves. Sorry. Haru-kun, I don't have much energy left. Plum said weakly. It's fine. You just need to listen carefully. I'll replenish your energy later. Really? That's great. Why are you suddenly so energetic? Haruya carried Plum back to the king, where the massive divine beast was waiting for their return. It had a rock in its mouth, but upon seeing Plum's pale face, it ran over and lowered its head to look at him. Haruya set Plum down on the ground. The damper had already lost most of his energy from using magic earlier, which wasn't a good sign. Ahaha, stop. Stop licking me, Cory. I may like saliva, but I only like Haru-kun's saliva. Plum, who was being licked by the massive divine beast's tongue, said this, leaving Haruya at a loss for words. Being licked by a trap for his saliva was just too strange. Sitting down and looking at the virtual chessboard, Haruya noticed that they now had vision of two pieces. They were Sora and Shiro's pawn, as well as Izuna and her partner's pawn. Of course, Haruya's pawn was also visible, but it was flickering, on the verge of being destroyed. This was the consequence of acting recklessly. At that moment, Sora and Shiro's piece moved, another pawn appeared in their field of vision. Did entering combat provide vision to all players? Haruya didn't dwell on the question. Instead, he decided to send a pawn to reinforce the scorched pawn on the front lines. He moved the second pawn on the right 2 steps forward and discovered that it was a flying divine beast. With its massive wings spread, it soared through the air, charging toward the battlefield. Then, it was Izuna and Maiko's turn. They had attacked Haruya first, so according to the game's rules, they had to attack Sora and Shiro next. Haruya climbed onto the king's back. The battlefield in the distance wasn't very clear, but he could get a general idea by analyzing the chessboard's layout. The flying divine beast reached the battlefield and landed beside the pawn that had been attacked earlier. Without any attack commands, the flying divine beast grabbed a tree from below and hurled it at Izuna and the others in the distance. The divine beast shattered the tree with a single swipe, and the two sides clashed. At that moment, Izuna and the others began their attack on Sora and Shiro. What's this piece arrangement? Haruya noticed that Izuna and Maiko had moved another pawn towards Sora and Shiro, splitting their forces. Although they couldn't attack the same side consecutively, they could defend after attacking one side. Yet, they had split their forces to attack both. Are they trying to fight two opponents at once? The werebeasts. Did they have a surefire strategy? Then, roars and violent explosions erupted. Pawn, attack. Knight, attack. The divine beasts began to fight at close and long range. To bring out the most useful rook, Haruya sent 2 pawns forward to fight. However, the flying divine beast was torn apart by the opponent's divine beast in close combat. This wasn't chess. It was a variant. It had the rules of chess, but it was vastly different. Explosions, roars, the furious cries of the divine beasts, and virtual blood turned the battlefield into a scene of devastation. The triangular chessboard zone was now littered with the scars of war. Chapter 46, Resurrection of the Dead, Part 1. In the game, the participants were all planning their next moves, staring at the semi-transparent chessboard floating in midair. First, virtual divine beast chess had already deviated from the scope of traditional chess. Rather than focusing on logical moves, the key to victory lay in utilizing the unique characteristics of the divine beasts. Second, before taking any action, it was essential to anticipate the next moves of the other 2 opponents. This would help avoid falling into their traps. As long as these 2 rules were followed, they could at least avoid falling into a significant disadvantage. Currently, we've only lost 1 pawn. Team Red, the werebeasts, has suffered no losses and they still have 2 pawns on the front lines. As for Sora and Shiro, they have 1 pawn deployed on the front lines, and their second move seems to involve moving a piece from the rear, which we can't see right now. Plum, are you feeling better now? Yes, thanks to Harukan's treatment. I had to run for several minutes straight. And at top speed, no less, circling around like an idiot in front of the audience from the 3 races. But thanks to that, Haruya was now drenched in sweat, just like in the real world. Such a realistic virtual simulation was rare. Taking off his drenched shirt and handing it to Plum, the scene quickly became inappropriate for younger viewers. Haruya signaled Ino to censor the scene, and soon a series of bibibi sounds echoed as mysterious blurry patterns appeared around Plum. Why just the shirt, Harukan? Give me your whole body, your arms, your armpits, your PFFT. Shut up. Haruya punched Plum in the stomach, causing him to let out a cry and collapse to the ground. Hey! Wake up! Plum, I was just playing. I didn't hit you that hard, did I? Outside the game, the Immanity spectators laughed at Haruya's attack on his companion, while the nearby sirens stuck out their tongues at the Immanity in disapproval. Watching the tense atmosphere in the venue, which was on the verge of erupting into a real interracial battle, Hatsu's Ino raised his microphone and signaled for the audience to quiet down. Otherwise, everyone would have their memories wiped and be kicked out of the venue. Seeing the venue finally quiet down again, Ino watched the actions of the 3 factions through the venue's large LCD screen and whispered to Izuna and the Shrine Priestess, ensuring only they could hear. Haruya's actions, Sora and Shiro's actions, and the current layout of the game. Negation, I see, they've all become more cautious now. But Ino, what did you mean by that earlier? Negation. It's exactly as it sounds, Maiko-sama. Sora Dono and Shiro Dono have moved their king to the front lines. Hearing this, the Shrine Priestess frowned slightly. Her golden eyes seemed to see something, and then she smiled. Negation, no need to worry. Our methods are foolproof. Negation. Understood. Negation, what about the other fool? The Immanity who became the Siren's representative, what's he doing? Negation. I'm not sure. Right now, he's just running around in the forest. Negation, got it. Izuna, let's get started too. Prepare for the next move. Negation. Beside the Shrine Priestess, Izuna, who was sitting on another divine beast, nodded. Negation, you understood Maiko-sama, Negation. Meanwhile, Haruya was running around the forest, seemingly searching for something. He crouched down, picked up a handful of dirt, sniffed it, and then tossed it aside. He then climbed a tree to pick some fruit. The reproduction is incredibly realistic. It's almost no different from the real world. Haruya was doing this because he remembered Plum's earlier interaction with their king divine beast piece. These divine beast pieces also had self-awareness. So, at this moment, it was Haruya's turn to make his third move. Thus, Haruya moved one of his strongest pieces, the queen, sending it to the front lines to fight. At the same time, he instructed Plum to search for something Haruya needed. Huh? Harukan, you're not joking, are you? Once you find it, come to the front lines and meet me. Then, we'll end this game. With that, Haruya ran forward. His remaining stamina was enough to get him to the front lines. When he arrived, the situation on the battlefield had changed dramatically. In the most dangerous part of the triangular chessboard zone, 8 pieces were facing off. Sora and Shiro and the Shrine Priestess each had 3 pieces, while Haruya only had 2. Then, the Shrine Priestess made her 4th move, launching a second attack on Haruya's side. Move, the Queen. Following the Shrine Priestess's will, the piece moved toward Haruya's side. Is she trying to throw the game? The Werebeast's Queen had moved into a position where Haruya could capture it with his next move. No, even so, the War Beast's representative, the golden-haired, fox-eared Shrine Priestess, wore a relaxed expression. Faced with the Divine Beast at close range, the bear-like Divine Beast beside Haruya let out a roar. Without the command to attack, it began to attack to protect its territory. This ironclad bear was Team Blue's queen, and the black light from its mouth shot toward the Werebeast's queen like a laser. At that moment, I knew it. Damn it! Haruya cried out. The Shrine Priestess, who had been sitting on the Divine Beast, jumped down, and her body immediately began to change. It was Blood Break. Her physical abilities weren't as strong as before, but they were enough to support the use of Blood Break. Her entire body transformed, and her power defied the laws of physics. The Shrine Priestess's golden eyes and fur turned red, as if a dye-filled balloon had exploded. As the blood scattered, the Shrine Priestess's sensory world almost came to a standstill. Her nerves surged, and her senses became extremely sharp. Her 5 senses, her 6th sense, and even her magical perception reached their limits. With a bang, her expanded perception from Blood Break reached a point where it threatened to destroy her very self. Her senses, forcibly pushed beyond their physical limits, captured every movement within a radius of 500 meters. It was as if a barrier had been erected. The space within a 500-meter radius became the Shrine Priestess's world. Every object within it, from a single leaf to a grain of sand, was captured in her perception. She could even count their numbers with perfect accuracy. Her gaze fell on Haruya's queen's attack, and she smirked. With a swift motion of her right hand, she slashed through the empty air. Working in tandem with the power of the Divine Beast behind her, the attack from Haruya's queen vanished into thin air. The overwhelming power of their combined forces made the air around them tense. The shock wave from the violent explosion caused Haruya's clothes to flutter wildly in the wind. The tip of her foot touched the ground. Boom. Then the ground cracked, and the fox-eared Shrine Priestess landed on the ground, raising her fan and looking at Haruya, who wasn't far away. She exhaled. Let's have some fun, humanity boy. Chapter 47, Resurrection of the Dead, Part 2. Nanbu. Haruya was not running, but sprinting. I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. This is totally cheating. How can she use that kind of ability to match the Divine Beasts in this virtual world? I object to this game. Sorry, but the game itself is fair. It's just that some races have inherent advantages. If this were in the ocean, you sirens would definitely have the upper hand, right? Besides, at the start of the game, didn't everyone have confidence in their victory? Are you misunderstanding something, old man? The ones representing the sirens in this game are an humanity and a damper. Even though Haruya protested, it didn't seem to change anything. It was clear that the game wouldn't be stopped midway. If only they had taken precautions earlier, like setting up a mechanism to forcibly terminate the game in case of an emergency. But such a safety measure would also render the game meaningless, as it wouldn't allow them to become the representatives of the 3 races. Simply put, the greater the potential reward, the greater the risk. Haruya retreated once again, trying to avoid the Shrine Priestess and her queen piece. Going head-to-head with them was nothing short of suicidal. At this point, Haruya had no idea what Sora and Shiro would do next. Regardless, I'll play more defensively from now on, focusing entirely on defense. This was the conclusion Haruya reached after some thought. In fact, many people would understand this logic. If direct confrontation with the enemy offers no advantage or chance of victory, then opting for a defensive strategy and waiting for an opportunity to counterattack is the way to go. Just then, as Haruya was running back, he caught a whiff of danger. He stopped in his tracks and looked up to the right, where a glowing dot appeared in midair. Then, the dot slowly expanded. It was an energy sphere. Shit. Damn it. Judging from the direction, it was coming from Sora and Shiro's side. As the sphere got closer, Haruya decided not to immediately activate his cheat ability. His reasoning was simple, he wanted to understand the nature of this attack and its exact impact. In short, it was his insatiable curiosity. This was why Haruya had managed to maintain his sanity despite dying repeatedly. Well, whether he was truly sane was still up for debate. After all, who would want to figure out what killed them? It was painful, and not something anyone could easily accept. But Haruya was different. He stopped, thinking that the energy sphere must have been launched by one of the Divine Beasts. The next moment, the energy sphere struck the ground. The violent impact destroyed everything in its path. Trees, mountains, rivers, and Haruya, who had been standing under a tree. His virtual consciousness ended there. Feeling the extent of the destruction, Haruya figured out how to avoid it. Checkpoint, reload. Returning to the moment before Sora and Shiro's attack, Haruya found a depression in the ground while running. If he had activated his ability before the attack, he probably wouldn't have known where to hide. In that case, he would have had to die repeatedly. Crouching in the depression, the ground shook as rocks fell and trees shattered around him. After a while, the shock wave from the energy spear subsided, and Haruya finally let out a sigh of relief. Whether defending or attacking, it always seemed like he was the one getting eliminated. Is Plum still not done yet? Haruya glanced back at the forest, wondering how Plum was doing. Looking around, Haruya's gaze returned to the floating chessboard in front of him. Half the game had already passed, and it was about to enter the most chaotic and intense phase. He decided to move the rook out to prevent the shrine priestess from flanking and attacking the king. Haruya's plan remained the same: defend, then counterattack. That said, the current situation was far from ideal. Both Sora and Shiro, as well as Izuna and the shrine priestess, were gradually gaining the upper hand. When it was Haruya's turn, he moved the rook from its position to the left. There, it encountered Sora and Shiro's pawn. Both were dragon-like divine beasts, but Haruya's rook was clearly larger and more imposing than Sora and Shiro's pawn. Tear it apart. Without realizing it, Haruya let out a somewhat Chiyunobu-esque shout. The dragon's claws shredded the pawn's body. The turn ended, and it was now the shrine priestess's turn. This is bad. At that moment, Plum came running out from the mountains behind them, carrying a bunch of fruits and leaves. Why did you make me collect all this stuff, Haru-kun? We've been tricked. Sora and Shiro are closing in from that side, and the shrine priestess is on the other side. In a way, we're surrounded. We're doomed. Shut up, Plum. Now, tie these things together with leaves and branches, then crush the juice and sprinkle it on the rocks. Haruya instructed. Huh? Are we making rock salad? I'm not eating that. I only want Haru-kun's saliva. I said shut up. Their turn ended, and it was now the shrine priestess's turn. The two of them worked together to carry out Haruya's plan, rushing forward with a pile of rocks. Not far away, the golden-haired shrine priestess, sitting atop her queen divine beast, laughed as she asked, "What are you doing? Giving up? I'm going to take out your queen with this move," she added. "If you can." Haruya taunted. The shrine priestess hesitated for a moment. To her, this seemed like nothing more than Haruya bluffing. After glancing at the chessboard, the shrine priestess made the move she had mentioned earlier. The Werebeast's queen began its attack. Faced with attacks from both sides, Haruya shouted, "Throw them now." The two of them, Haruya and Plum, hurled the juice-covered rocks before the Werebeast's queen divine beast could act. The Warbeast's queen divine beast was about to attack, but its nose twitched when it saw the rocks. Its eyes lost their sharpness, and it let out a whimper like a puppy. Roar. Whimper. Just like that, it pounced on the rocks that emitted the fragrant juice. The ground shook as it ran, but the scene wasn't as majestic as one might expect. Wagging its tail and sniffing the scent, it chased after the rocks Haruya and Plum had thrown. Beside them, Plum's expression was somewhat ambiguous, but his hands didn't stop. Not just the Werebeast's queen, but Haruya's queen also ran out, and the two giant divine beasts began fighting over the juice-covered rocks. Like puppies. The attack from the Werebeast's queen divine beast was forcibly halted. What the hell is this? As expected, the spectators erupted in humorous remarks. Chapter 48, Castling. This situation is. Did you figure out this method after seeing me play with the king earlier? For these divine beasts, war is like a game, and games are like war, right? Exactly. Didn't you use a rock to play with the king earlier? It made it act like a puppy, starting a game around the rock. It seems that these little games are more appealing to the divine beasts than actual combat. By diverting the divine beasts' attention, Haruya and Plum were able to make them act as planned, preventing any intense conflicts. After blocking 3 attacks from the golden-haired shrine priestess on the front lines, Haruya and Plum retreated to the rear, climbing onto the back of the king. During those 3 attacks, the shrine priestess had tried to stop them from using the juice-covered rocks to distract the divine beasts, but Plum had barely managed to hold her off. After all, physical prowess and magic were 2 different things. Thanks to this, Haruya's side finally made it through the most dangerous phase and entered a transitional period. All 3 factions had moved most of their pieces to the front lines, with only the king, bishop, and similar pieces remaining in the rear. Let's analyze the current situation, Haru-kun. Look at this, Sora and Shiro have pushed their pieces too far forward, haven't they? Haruya, there were pieces here? I didn't see them when I was on the front lines. Plum, There are pieces here. From the looks of it, it's a giant turtle. A giant turtle? Such a divine beast was probably one with extremely high defense, making it a tough opponent. However, high defense also meant low attack power, and it wouldn't be able to dodge their attacks either. If you asked which side had the advantage, it was definitely the attacking side. Defense could hold the line, but it couldn't guarantee victory. As Haruya was thinking this, Blom gently tapped his shoulder and pointed at the chessboard in front of him. Haru-kun, it's our turn. Alright, it's finally time to head to the real battlefield. The most intense moment of this game is about to begin. Haruya had the king move forward, and the two of them felt the wind around them grow stronger and cooler. The soft fur of the king fluttered in the air as it galloped across the land. When they reached a high slope on the front lines, they saw the divine beast standing above the vast forest below. The triangular chessboard was beneath them, indicating that the end of the game was near. It was now the were beast's turn to move, and this time, it was Izuna who took action. She stood on the back of a giant tiger, which was the knight piece. Her current target was the last pawn that Sora and Shiro had moved to the front. Sora and Shiro's aggressive fighting style had caused more pawn losses than expected. But this had also dealt some blows to Izuna. After using Blood Break twice, she was now out of stamina. Moreover, those two instances of Blood Break were incomplete. Even so, the knight piece was far more powerful than the pawn. The giant tiger pounced in the next moment, and Izuna jumped off its back at the same time to coordinate the attack. Even without using her abilities, Izuna could still make good use of her body, deftly drawing the pawn's attention. Claws and roars, collisions and explosions. After a series of battles, Izuna emerged victorious. Sora complimented, an impressive battle plan. Is this what you had in mind, Izuna? We will win, Bisu. It's our turn now, Shiro. It's about time. After Sora finished talking with Izuna, Shiro nodded beside him. This time, Drumroll and Steph were of no use, as Sora and Shiro carried out their plan alone. Well, Steph's role was probably just to faint from fear of the divine beasts. Master, how will they act now? Drumroll asked. Drumroll, it's precisely because they don't know how to act that they can act. I don't quite understand, but if the master says so, it must be correct. Sora explained, what I mean is, when playing a game, it's precisely because you don't know how to win over a girl that you're restricted from acting. Taking even one wrong step could lead to a bad ending instead of a good one. I reminded you before on how to win over that Lilai character. Yeah. I'm just not good at dealing with that math genius Lilai girl. So now. Sora placed his hand on the chessboard in front of him. Haruya's earlier move was truly surprising. I never expected there to be a method of influencing the divine beasts using external factors. Surprising. Divine beasts. Infinite possibilities for influence. Shiro nodded. That's right. But this still has elements of chess, Shiro. I trust you completely in this regard. So. Castling. The siblings said something that should have been impossible. Castling is a special move in chess. In each game, both sides have one opportunity to move their king and one rook simultaneously as a single move by the king, called castling. The specific move, the king moves 2 squares toward a rook, and the rook moves to the square next to the king. The purpose of castling, first, to move the king to a safer position, and second, to bring the rook into the game. From the looks of their current pieces, aside from the lost ones, all the other pieces should have been moved. Wait, in their field of vision, there was only one rook. That meant there was a rook that hadn't been moved, but what about the king? Just as Haruya was puzzled, Steph sat up from behind a black wolf. The spot where she had been lying had a mark, the king. It was a black wolf, not very large, and it had been moved to the front lines. The king piece was actually on the front lines? If it had been moved, how could they perform castling? The reason is simple. The king never moved. Sora pointed at the giant turtle beneath him. What move was this knight? This way, the queen with high mobility at the front, along with the 2 rooks, will change the situation. They placed the king on the knight? A flash of light, and Steph looked around in confusion. Huh? What happened? I fainted earlier. Then, the rook that had castled with the king appeared. A massive lava giant standing at the very front of the battlefield. Haruya only had the queen at the front, while Sora and Shiro clearly had the upper hand in terms of combat power. This was the difference. It was like stealing several pieces, securing a decisive advantage. Chapter 49, The Sacrifice. So this is how they're using their king? I thought moving it to the front was just to increase combat power or use it as bait, but I never expected them to use an irregular castling to bring their strongest pieces to the front lines. The golden-haired shrine priestess standing atop her divine beast on the left side of Sora and Shiro's territory was somewhat surprised by their actions. However, Izuna, do you still have some stamina left? Can you handle things over there? No problem, Disu. I can still fight, Disu. Good. Since the Humanity have gained a numerical advantage and the Sirens have started defending, our situation has become delicate. But we still have one advantage. The Shrine Priestess remained calm. Even though the situation wasn't favorable, the two of them with their blood break abilities could turn the tide. Maiko continued, once the Sirens finish their move, we'll launch a full-scale attack. In the face of overwhelming power, small tricks are nothing to fear. Understood. I'll defeat Sora and Shiro, Disu. Speaking of moves. When it was Haruya's turn to move, he hesitated for a moment, deciding to slow down the pace. He couldn't let Sora and Shiro dictate the flow of the game. This entire situation was likely part of Sora and Shiro's plan. They had calculated the moves and outcomes of all three factions, creating an ideal scenario. Sora and Shiro's strongest combat pieces were all waiting at the front. On Haruya's side, the only strong piece at the front was the queen. The rest were pawns, with the knight and bishop slightly behind. Haru-kun, what should we do now? Don't panic. At this point, Virtual Divine Beast chess has already stopped being like chess. So, let's use methods that don't follow the rules either. Huh? What do you mean? Do you have a trump card, Haru-kun? What are you talking about? Our trump card is you, said Haruya, pointing at Plum. Me? I'm not going to charge forward and fight those terrifying divine beasts. Even if I won't really die, it'll still hurt. Plum shook his head, looking unwilling. Haruya sighed in response. He walked up to Plum and placed his hands on his shoulders. This is something only you can do. Only me? Hee, I'm not that amazing. Wait, no. Haru-kun, don't try to trick me. It's definitely something difficult, right? Not at all. You just need to give it your all. Outside the game, the audience watching through the large screen began to murmur. What's going on? Are those two going to pay Papa? Isn't that considered harmful behavior in the game too? What nonsense are you spouting? On the other side, Layla holding Mihama bit down on a towel, tearing at it with a look of clear frustration on her face. Darling has never said anything like that to me. Mama's expression is scary. Mihama flinched. Don't misunderstand, Mihama. I just want to cut off that damper's little brother. Mihama tilted her head in confusion. Cut off his little brother? It's too early for you to understand, Layla said, patting Mihama's head. Their conversation ended. In the game, Haruya looked at Plum, who was blushing and confused, and pulled him to the side of the divine beast. Then, he whispered in his ear, we'll do it like this. Like this, and like that. Will that really work? It has nothing to do with chess. You said it yourself earlier, right? That method can alter the opponent's perception. If that's the case, then the divine beasts should also be included, since they're living beings. As for whether it has anything to do with chess, do you think the current situation has anything to do with chess? Hearing Haruya's question, Plum looked at Sora and Shiro standing atop the lava giant, then at the two were beasts on the front lines, and finally shook his head. From the very beginning, this probably wasn't about winning through chess. Then, Haru-kun, should we execute the plan now? No. To achieve the best effect, we need to do it at the most impactful moment. The most impactful moment. In chess, there are three most impactful moments. First, victory. Second, castling. Third, pawn promotion. Winning directly through chess is impossible. Castling is no longer an option, so the only choice left is pawn promotion. However, only pawns can be promoted, so we must protect the pawns. Can we give our pieces the qualifications for promotion? Do you have a plan, Haru-kun? Of course, but the prerequisite is. Haruya looked at the king and other pieces beside him. The prerequisite is to make a choice, to make a sacrifice, to offer a tribute. Sacrificing pieces to protect the pawn's advance. Thus, Haruya and Plum began their actions. According to the rules, you can't continuously attack the same target, but what if all your moves are for defense? Thanks to this, Haruya moved all his pieces towards Sora and Shiro's side. All the pieces, the king, rook, bishop, and knight, surrounded a single pawn. In the distance, the golden-haired shrine priestess frowned. For the first time, she was truly puzzled. Suicide? Surrender? No, that couldn't be the case. Not far away, Izuna also stared intently at Haruya's battlefield, as the collisions between the divine beast chess pieces slowly unfolded. Haruya paid no attention to what others were thinking. He decided to go all in. Success or failure hinged on this move. Haru-kun. The attack is coming. Plum warned. Hide. If we get taken out, it's game over. Haruya pulled Plum over, and the two of them hid beneath the divine beast's body. The attack from Sora and Shiro's side arrived the next moment, and a violent impact and explosion erupted. The king divine beast, which had been with the two of them all along, now used its massive body to block the attack from the lava giant. The reason Haruya didn't choose to advance toward the were beasts was because he feared their combat power was even stronger, especially at the beginning and the end. Outside the game, the audience was puzzled by Haruya's actions, thinking them foolish. It was as if he was giving away his pieces for free, as Haruya's pieces rapidly decreased. Like an offering to the gods, he was handing over his pieces. That was the sacrifice. At that moment, the King Divine Beast let out a roar, and Haruya's army began to close in on Sora and Shiro's baseline. Chapter 50, The Final Shot, Love for All Divine Beasts. The terrain of virtual Divine Beast chess was quite simple. In this virtual game world, there was only one type of terrain. Mountain forests. Within this mountain forest terrain, there were also rivers and canyons, but for the Divine Beasts, these were all negligible. Yes, they were only negligible for the Divine Beasts. For someone like Haruya, a human, they posed significant challenges. Moreover, in a situation where Divine Beasts were attacking each other, it was impossible to ally with them. Haruya and Plum had to advance on their own. Whoa. Ah. Damn it. Plum. Haruya dodged the continuous barrage of attacks from Sora and Shiro's Divine Beasts with some bizarre movements, but he looked quite disheveled in the process. Since Plum was also a central figure in this plan, Haruya had to protect him while enduring the relentless attacks. Haru-kun, getting close to Sora and Shiro's baseline is practically impossible, isn't it? True, but we're about to succeed. Haruya grabbed Plum and jumped to the side, rolling into a stone pit together. The impact-like energy wave swept across the ground, causing Haruya's knight to collapse, creating another shock wave. When this round of attacks finally ended, it was Haruya's turn again. To save time and speed things up, Haruya had the king move forward continuously, with the other pieces following behind. In the middle was the pawn. This pawn was represented by a flame phoenix, its burning flames quite striking. Are you trying to promote that pawn? Even if you succeed, it won't do any good. Sora stood on a hill not far away, his clothes fluttering in the wind from the explosions around him. Whether it's useful or not, we'll only know after trying. Haru-kun. Haru-kun. The attack is coming. Whoa. Haruya and Plum started running toward the other side, dodging attacks while trying to catch up with the main force of advancing Divine Beasts. While Haruya was entangled with Sora and Shiro, the Shrine Priestess and Izuna also made their move. Their goal had been simple from the start, and so was their method of winning. Though simple, it was backed by overwhelming power, which was why they believed their chances of winning were high. Undoubtedly, their thinking wasn't wrong. When everyone's physical stats were the same, the two of them with their blood break were even stronger than Drumroll, the Fleagle. Izuna, I'll have the queen launch an attack, and you defend against their counterattacks. Maiko instructed. Understood, Disu. The Liliwara beast nodded. It was through such coordinated tactics that, up to this point, the Were beasts had lost the fewest pieces among the three factions. They locked onto their target, Sora and Shiro's knight. First, the Shrine Priestess moved the queen 3 steps forward. Once it reached a certain distance, the attack began. The Queen Divine Beast used its tail as a weapon for mid-range strikes, while the Shrine Priestess stood on the tail to add impact. Boom. The massive tail clashed violently with Sora and Shiro's knight, causing the ground to crack, smoke to billow, and rocks to fly everywhere. Counterattack, Shiro. Nissan. Don't get too excited. That's right, Master. After all, we have the advantage in combat power. Like in the Great War, no matter what tricks the enemy used, a single heavenly smite could blow everything away. Boom, boom, boom. Drumroll casually mentioned the heavenly smite, a move capable of destroying an entire country. When it was their turn, Sora and Shiro, who had previously attacked Haruya, now targeted the Shrine Priestess on the front lines. Little turtle. Use Ice Beam. Shiro commanded. Shiro, that's Squirtle's move. As Sora made a sarcastic remark, the giant turtle beneath them shot an ice beam from its mouth. It's shooting. Haruya and Sora shouted simultaneously. Facing the attack heading toward their pieces, Izuna and her Divine Beast ran toward the attack's trajectory. Don't think you'll succeed, Disu. The Divine Beast blocked the initial impact, and then Izuna used a massive rock she lifted from the ground to smash into the so-called ice beam. The rock was instantly frozen, falling to the ground as a mixture of stone and ice fragments. Haru-kun, let's sneak over while they're fighting. If it's sneaking, don't say it out loud. Haruya deadpanned. Why aren't you saying anything? You said not to talk. Haruya ignored Plum's subsequent questions. After Sora and Shiro made their move, the two of them continued to advance their army. For the Divine Beasts, the chessboard wasn't actually that big. So, how do you plan to defeat Master? Don't think you'll succeed. Ahead of them stood Drumroll, The Fleagle who had once slain gods, I'll interfere along with the divine beasts. With that, Drumroll grabbed 2 massive tree trunks with her hands. Then, she hurled them at the 2. I thought you couldn't attack people? Oops, my bad. I missed. Drumroll snickered. Plum. Move. Haruya first kicked Plum away, then followed suit, barely escaping the area before the tree trunks came crashing down, causing massive destruction. Hee hee. Drumroll stuck out her tongue, and Haruya waved his right hand. Charge forward. King. With majesty, the king charged into the enemy formation. By sacrificing pieces, Haruya's pawn was about to reach the baseline. The only remaining piece was the pawn. Haru-kun, what now? Promotion, of course. Just like we planned. As the 2 talked, they were surrounded by Sora and Shiro's pieces, as well as the Shrine Priestess and Izuna's pieces. We're in a dire situation. Outside the game, the audience from the 2 races other than the Sirens cheered. It was indeed a dire situation for the Sirens. There was no doubt about it. But your goal isn't just promotion, is it? Sora seemed to have realized something. He looked around, then at Haruya and Plum. Not sure, Disu. Izuna stood beside the Shrine Priestess, looking confused. Haruya's plan was simple. From the very beginning, he hadn't intended to gain an advantage through chess, but rather through another approach. Thus, Haruya raised his hand, promotion. To Queen. The flame phoenix representing the pawn was enveloped in light. The light, a mix of gold and red, was dazzling. The clouds above were dispersed, the grass and trees on the ground began to shake, and a bird's cry pierced the sky. Massive burning wings emerged, followed by a body radiating a faint glow. The surrounding divine beasts stopped their roars. Plum. Haruya signaled. Got it. Using all his energy, Plum activated his magic. Complex patterns appeared in Plum's eyes, and irregular red lines, like blood vessels, began to spread to his right hand. That hand moved slowly but intricately. Love magic, activate. Target locked, all divine beasts in this area. A warm light spread out from Plum, enveloping all the divine beasts in the vicinity. In the next moment, the once threatening divine beasts lowered their heads toward the queen divine beast behind Haruya, the flame phoenix. That gesture perhaps symbolized offering loyalty to their most beloved divine beast. What's going on? The shocked Maiko cried out. It's simple. Haruya answered the Shrine Priestess's question. We utilized Plum's love magic initially. When everyone gathered here, we activated it. So, these divine beasts. Haruya scanned the area, then continued. Have all been conquered by us. With love. The winner of the game was now evident. Chapter 53, the game was declared over, the virtual world began to collapse, and everyone returned to reality. Now, let's talk about what happened afterward. Though, in truth, it was just an informal discussion among the game participants after the game ended. It was only at this moment that Haruya realized the problem he was facing. There were actually 2 winners in his game, the superficial victory and the underlying victory. The reason Haruya said this was because, during his conversation with Sora and Shiro, he fully understood the meaning behind their words. In fact, Sora and Shiro had no intention of hiding their thoughts. This is the first time I've encountered such a situation. Even though I didn't really want to win, I was still shocked by Haruya's plan. Who would have thought of conquering the divine beast pieces? It's just super reckless. Losing the game didn't leave Sora feeling particularly bitter. Sitting in his chair, he said this. The reason was simple, and he was about to explain it to everyone present. Without a doubt, the race that suffered the most losses in this game was the Werebeasts. Though it was a bit unfair to Izuna, there was nothing that could be done about it. Though I'm not bitter, I'm still a little upset. After all the rights we had as representatives have been transferred to Haruya. Sora started. But only the rights. Our rights. Beside him, Shiro, who was stroking Izuna's head, added this statement, making everyone present take the matter seriously. Humanity, Sora, Shiro, Drumroll, and Steph. Werebeasts, Maiko, Izuna, and Ino. Sirens, Haruya, Plum, Mahama, and Layla. These 3 factions were represented by these individuals, and now Sora and Shiro were acting as the spokespersons. Now that the game was over, Ino, who had just heard Sora and Shiro's explanation, didn't fully understand what their words meant. What do you mean? The elderly Werebeast inquired. Shiro has already made it clear enough. It's exactly as it sounds. Haruya has won the rights of our representatives, that's all. That's all? Ino looked at the Shrine Priestess, who pointed her fan at Sora. Then, what about everything else? Because mere rights can't control everything in a country, right? Good question, Shrine Priestess. Sora snapped his fingers, while Haruya listened quietly. Thinking carefully, Sora and Shiro's earlier statement had already proven one thing: Haruya had only won the rights. In other words, he only had the rights, nothing else. This was the conclusion Haruya had reached, and it was likely part of Sora and Shiro's plan. Could it be? Haruya, you figured it out? As expected of someone who loves alternative methods. Though, that was quite an interesting move. Before that, since the game is over, let me explain briefly. Sora turned to look at the corridor behind him, and two people entered the room from the other side. They were Feel Nervalin of the Elves, and Clemizel of Humanity. Feel appeared calm and composed, but Clemi seemed a bit uncomfortable. With so many people watching her, and from different races, she couldn't act like her usual self. Feel placed a hand on Clemi's shoulder and gently pushed her forward. I am Feel Nervalin. Sigh. I am Clemizel. Haruya had some impression of both of them. Clemi, an Humanity, had been a slave to the Nervalin family since her grandfather's generation. A spy for the Elven country Elven Guard, she had achieved victory after victory with the support of Elven magic, only to be exposed and defeated by Sora and Shiro. Her previous goal in participating in the king's election was to preserve humanity's last territory by becoming a puppet state of the elves. So why was she here now? Perhaps it was related to what Haruya had guessed earlier. Sora had them sit in the vacant seats. The beast-eared girls began serving tea, something the wary beasts excelled at. With everyone settled, Sora continued, in the game that just ended, we all bet our races pieces, right? At the same time, it was only because we had the rights of representatives that we could bet our races pieces in the game. So, before the game started, we first lost to Clemi. What does that mean? Plum, who was drinking tea, asked this question. Since Mihama wanted to take some sweets, Layla picked her up, and their actions drew the attention of others. Mihama, you can't just take things. Papa. Mihama glanced at Haruya. Darling is in a meeting. You can bother him later, said Layla. Darling? Mihama intoned, her head slightly tilted. Only I can call him that. You can't. I'll get mad. Chastised the degenerate Siren Queen. What kind of childcare is this? Sora, I'm still a bit envious. Ouch. Don't pinch me, Shiro. I'm just expressing my feelings. Anyway, back to the topic. Turning his attention away from Layla and Mihama, Sora gave Haruya a look of disdain before continuing. As I said earlier, only those with the rights of representatives can bet their races pieces. The cost of losing is handing over everything you have, represented by the race pieces, to the winner. But those rights are time-limited, right? Could it be that in the game you deliberately lost to Clemi, the condition was? Haruya muttered in realization. What do you think? Sora smiled as he asked Haruya. Noticing that everyone was looking at him, Haruya began to explain. Though it wasn't really an explanation, he was just sharing his speculation with everyone present. Since you weren't afraid of losing at all, what you bet must have been something like time-limited representative rights, right? Correct. Sora nodded. The others didn't quite understand the conversation between Haruya and Sora, but the shrine priestess narrowed her eyes. What Haruya said about time-limited representative rights is similar to our wager. To be more precise, the rule was if we lose to Clemi in the game, we will transfer all rights, but the covenant will take effect 3 days later, which is today. How shameless, the shrine priestess interjected at this point, because this wager was about handing over the race pieces owned by the representatives to the winner. Only the representatives could use the race pieces. But when today ends, you lose your representative rights, and after the race pieces are handed over to Haruya, they will return to Clemi, right? Because the representative who bet the race pieces wasn't Clemi. Everyone present suddenly understood. Sora and Shiro had essentially suffered no losses. On the contrary, they had gained valuable information, which was. The shrine priestess sighed, her golden foxtail swaying weakly as she continued, your wager was reclaimed, and you also learned about our game content and methods, understood the importance of damper magic, and got a grasp of the siren's situation. It's like killing 3 birds with 1 stone. That's why the shrine priestess had called Sora and Shiro shameless earlier. Who would have thought? Haruya hadn't expected Sora and Shiro to use such tactics. Haruya had only used methods that didn't quite align with the role of a gamer to win the game, while Sora and Shiro, as gamers, had been advancing step by step, carefully strategizing their way through this world. They were opposites, yet there were similarities. However, Sora also stroked Izuna's head, causing Ino to grit his teeth. We're not completely without losses. After all, we're now Haruya's people. The Covenants only exchanged rights. Haruya looked at Sora, Shiro, Steph, and Jibril. Now, they were all his people. It was a rather peculiar feeling. After their actions this time, it was likely that future games would include a rule like no prior covenant with other individuals. But why didn't they let him go back? They could have walked away unscathed. There's one more thing. I forgot. Sora patted his head. Haruya, the reason we're not going back is also simple. In the covenant with Clemmy, there was a clause that said when we return victorious, the rights will return to us. In other words, Sora stood up and looked at Haruya. I'm somewhat impressed by your methods, Haruya, but that doesn't mean we'll lose to you. This time doesn't count, so let's play another game, betting everything we have. In short, after losing the game and gaining all sorts of information, Sora and Shiro wanted to defeat Haruya to return to Elkia, thereby obtaining all the information they wanted as well as the race pieces of the three countries. However, their ultimate goal was actually the Commonwealth of Elkia, so Sora retracted his earlier statement, let's play a game. Even if you lose, we can still have fun and form a great alliance. This, of course, included the Sirens, Werebeasts, and humanity. Though the plot had taken some twists and turns, it was somewhat similar to the original storyline, provided Haruya accepted Sora's challenge. They no longer had any rights, and Haruya hadn't received any justification, but the thought of it was quite intriguing. To truly face off against Sora and Shiro in a game, to have a direct confrontation. How shameless. In that case, aren't we the only ones at a disadvantage? The Shrine Priestess stood up, clearly dissatisfied. Indeed, the Golden Shrine Priestess was right. The Werebeasts were the ones at the biggest disadvantage. Not to mention that the game's content had been revealed to many, and even the Werebeasts' race pieces had fallen into someone else's hands, putting them in a completely unfavorable situation. The Shrine Priestess wasn't usually this rash, she had been quite confident in her initial plan. On the surface, the game was based on chess, but the real reason was to rely on the Werebeasts' abilities to gain an advantage. The Blood Break ability was among the top in physical boosts among the 16 races, but Haruya and the others had avoided direct confrontation. Even if this game required direct confrontation, Haruya and the others had managed to avoid it. Of course, from a process perspective, they had succeeded, but the result was completely different from what they had imagined. The process could influence the outcome, but for the participants of this game, the uncertainty of the result was quite significant. Conquering the divine beasts. The Shrine Priestess said this. No one could have imagined that Haruya would make the virtual game's divine beasts fall in love. However, the Shrine Priestess had originally had a backup plan. It was just that Haruya's actions had shattered all her plans, as all the divine beasts had been captivated by Haruya's queen. After saying this, the Shrine Priestess turned her gaze to Haruya, and what will you do with us? Look here, Shrine Priestess, I won't enslave the Werebeasts. The game rules have such provisions. And it's about making everyone have fun. You won't do anything bad to us? National cooperation, sharing resources. Even though I have your race pieces, my only request is to live together. What a strange and intriguing thought, symbiosis, huh? The Shrine Priestess walked up to Haruya and whispered in his ear, what about the reproduction problem of the Sirens and their allies, the Dapper? That is a rather serious issue. Haruya decided to avoid this topic. As if waiting for the two to finish, Layla quietly approached Haruya from behind. Don't get so close to other women in front of me, my dear. Or I'll kill you. Did I hear that wrong? Layla chuckled. Yeah, you heard wrong. It's just a joke, right, Mihama? Close your eyes later. I definitely didn't hear wrong, retorted Haruya. Ignoring the two, the Shrine Priestess returned to her seat. Any other questions? At that moment, Izuna, who had been sitting beside Sora and Shiro, let out a small growl from her stomach. I'm hungry, Bisu. Then let's do this. Haruya picked up on Izuna's words. I know a way to make some delicious dishes. In my hometown, it's called Mappo cuisine. Sounds good, Bisu. Yeah. Sora echoed. Before Haruya could continue, Layla appeared from behind again. That would be nice. Imitating Haruya's tone, Layla pointed to the corridor behind her. But before that, don't we need to take a bath? You must be sweating a lot now, right? That's true. Haruya had no reason to object. As soon as Haruya finished speaking, Layla grabbed his hand and ran toward the room. Let's take a bath. Wait. Surprised, a notification of mission complete appeared in Haruya's mind. But more importantly, saving a checkpoint now was crucial. Well, let's take a bath first. That was Haruya's answer. Chapter 54, Prologue, Past Saves and New Checkpoints. If everything were just a dream, waking up would probably drive anyone insane. It's like the rumored ending of Doraemon, where Nobita is revealed to be an autistic child, and everything was just his imagination. Clearly, no one would want to accept such an ending. Haruya was no exception. On one hand, he wished everything he had experienced was just a dream, but he knew that was impossible. Oh, darling, what do you mean by going on a trip? Are you going to do something shady again? I've never done anything shady, okay? When I say I'm going on a trip, it's just... Just what? Facing Haruya, who was sharing the hot spring with her, Layla, the queen of the sirens, rubbed her porcelain-like skin against his back as part of their bonding. Haruya wanted to refuse, but Layla threatened him with inhumane actions if he did, so he had no choice but to bathe with her. Papa, want some wine? Not only was Layla here, but Haruya's daughter, Mahama, had also joined them in the hot spring. Mahama, as if testing the depth of the hot spring, dove underwater after speaking to Haruya. Behind him, Haruya could feel the allure of Layla's provocative body. Layla, though I don't know what you're planning to do, you'll come back, right? Haruya, of course. Layla, then let me bathe you. Do you want to use our siren-exclusive shampoo or the Werebeast's body wash? Oh, and there's also the Humanity kind, which has hair removal effects. It's a nightmare for the Werebeasts. Haruya, that's true. So, what's the siren shampoo for? To make the skin smoother? Layla, who could move freely in the water, straightened up and began searching for the item she had mentioned. It's this. Layla held up a crystal bottle filled with a sparkling liquid. A slight shake revealed some white foam. It seemed like the items in this isekai weren't much different from those in the modern world, except for the materials used to make them. Thinking this, Haruya realized he didn't need to bathe since he had already washed before entering the hot spring. Of course, there was no reason to refuse a hair washington. Standing up from the hot spring, Haruya wrapped a towel around himself and was about to leave when Layla grabbed him. What are you afraid of, darling? It's just us and Mahama here. No need to be so shy. With that, Layla climbed out of the hot spring and sat on the floor beside it. Yes, Layla was now completely naked, her enticing body steaming from the hot spring, her slightly red skin like an alluring flower. The curves of her human upper body were perfect, while her fishtail wagged slightly like a puppy's. Smiling, she propped herself up with her hands and lunged at Haruya the moment he let his guard down. Hey! Ugh! Haruya's lower body was pinned by Layla's fishtail as she used her hands to restrain his arms. Drool dripped from her mouth, and her eyes turned into heart shapes. I've always wanted to do this. Calm down, Layla, you dumb obsessive woman. Now's not the time for this. No, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Haruya stopped mid-sentence, deciding to throw his integrity out the window. After all, this was a great chance to understand the anatomy of a mermaid. For science. Layla's drool dripped onto Haruya's chest, as if filled with burning passion. Haruya licked his lips. It's like some strange switch has been flipped. I'm going to do it, darling. This is the first time. Here I go. Ooh. Layla first pressed her body against Haruya's chest, her two soft objects compressed and deformed as they rubbed against his skin. This is sublime. That was the only word Haruya could think of. Since the room was filled with steam from the hot spring, Layla could stay on land for a while. Layla bent her body, bringing her mouth to Haruya's abdomen, and bit onto the towel there. Pant, I'm going to make a hole. Layla, now speaking gibberish, began moving her head to pull the towel off Haruya. Her breath brushed against his skin, and Haruya frowned slightly. Was this considered passive? Then, Haruya broke free and used his right hand to caress Layla's cheek. Huh? Layla, still biting the towel, looked confused. Your skin is so smooth because of the shampoo. Haruya complimented. It wasn't much different from what he had imagined a mermaid to be. However, when it comes to reproduction, where are those parts? And how does it work? Haruya's thoughts were a mess when Mahama jumped out of the water. Papa, Mama. She landed directly on Layla's back. Ugh. Ah. Layla's head slammed into Haruya's mini-me, and then a sorrowful cry echoed through the room. In the changing room, Layla stayed in the water, reminiscing about what had just happened. Though it didn't succeed, I still experienced something unique. You sure got your fill. Haruya rubbed his legs. It was about time to move. Looking at the two beside him, Haruya patted their heads. I'll be back soon. This checkpoint save would probably remain forever. With that, Haruya accepted the summons from the Supreme Deity. When he came to, Haruya found himself in the infinite void once more. Above him, the Supreme Deity greeted him as usual. This being, who was practically invincible to Haruya, could be so friendly. Likely out of boredom. Looking around, Haruya noticed a door in front of him, with no one else in sight. Welcome back to my humble abode, Nanbu Haruya. Please open that door. Is there a surprise? I'm not the type to be scared by a jack-in-the-box behind a door. Not at all. I just got some test subjects from my friends in other dimensions. And yes, my friends are supreme deities, and the test subjects? Simple. They're humans. The Supreme Deity casually referred to humans as test subjects. Sorry, it's a bit rude to refer to your kind as test subjects, isn't it? It seems I haven't fully mastered your etiquette. Even after reading thousands of years of human literature, I still can't communicate perfectly. The Supreme Deity's apology didn't make Haruya feel any better. Then let me take a look at these test subjects. Haruya pushed open the door. Chapter 1. Game rules cannot be skipped. Haruya had always had a question, one that still troubled him to this day. I know I'm probably the first person to enter your intrinsic domain, but besides that, what other reasons make you so interested in me, Supreme Deity-san? It's not just because you can't find anyone to talk to, right? The last part of your sentence is indeed one of the reasons. I truly can't find anyone to talk to. Additionally, there are two other reasons. You possess abilities, and your way of thinking is different from ordinary people. Let me make this clear first, I'm not some kind of eccentric. If my perspective is different, it's just because I'm standing from a different angle. That's why it's one of the reasons. For example, what do you think of me, the Supreme Deity? Most people would find it strange, right? Why would I talk to humans like this? Faced with this question from the Supreme Deity, Haruya quickly came up with an answer. My perspective is that if I were the Supreme Deity in such a boring world, I would definitely seek out things that interest me. Even if I have knowledge, asking humans who have experienced things firsthand would be more interesting. Exactly, the Supreme Deity affirmed. Of course, the Supreme Deity could probably recreate the experiences of those humans and experience them personally, but it's likely that he wouldn't do that. In fact, as there were about 30 people in front of him, the conversation between the Supreme Deity and Haruya took place in his mind. If these people found out about Haruya's relationship with the Supreme Deity, chaos, questioning, and suspicion would surely break out immediately. Looking at the 30 people in the square, there were men and women, old and young. Based on Haruya's guess, the youngest was around 14, and the oldest was around 50. The ratio of male to female was about 2 to 1, 20 males and 10 females. This time, it wasn't a solo mission, but one where he had to work with these people. Thinking this, Haruya sighed. Getting involved with others always led to endless trouble, which was why most of Haruya's friends were online acquaintances, rarely meeting in real life. More importantly, after he arrived, many people turned to look at him. It's obviously because Haruya had come out of the door, and he was the last one. So it was hard not to attract attention. Among the 30 people in the intrinsic domain, with Haruya making 31, some were panicked, some were confused, and some were very calm. What the hell is going on? Why did we suddenly end up in this damn place? Who knows? Does anyone know and can tell us? Wasn't it just a prank email? Could it be that prank email? An impatient man shouted, and a man in a suit also speculated. At this moment, a young man playing a game console denied their conversation. This probably isn't the work of an email, but a spatial displacement. Although there are cases of using hypnotic music in virus emails to mentally control or subconsciously guide recipients, it takes a lot of time. Such an experiment was once conducted in a German lab, similar to observing how long a human can maintain mental stability while living alone. If we were controlled by an email, then that email would have had to be sent to our computers months ago. After saying this,